Play it again, I whispered, and God help me, I did. I hit play for the 6th time, even though I already knew every second of it by heart. 37 seconds of audio that turned my entire life into drywall dust. Her voice came through, too clear, too sharp, too casual. No, seriously, I can't even look him in the eyes without wanting to laugh. He worships me, Lana. Like, it's not sweet. It's exhausting. I feel like I'm dating a golden retriever with anxiety. The air in the room hadn't moved in 20 minutes. He's going to propose tonight. I saw the ring in his sock drawer last week. It's not even that bad a ring. But like, is pity a good reason to say yes? I was sitting on the floor in our apartment, wedding guest list in one hand, her voice memo in the other, and the world falling apart around me, slowly, neatly, like paper peeling from a soaked wall. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even move, except to hit play again. You're gonna judge me, but I've already made peace with it. I'll say yes, we'll do the wedding, and then, I don't know, a year, maybe 2? I just want to get through it without drama. He's so fragile, you know? He'll survive. I hit pause before the laughter. That part made my skin crawl. This wasn't a story about a breakup. Not anymore. It was a slow-motion execution, and I had just overheard the assassin giving an interview. The worst part? She hadn't even sent it to me. After that 6th listen, something in me finally cracked. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but the quiet kind. The kind that happens when you realize you've been loving someone so blindly that you missed the obvious signs they were tiptoeing out the door months ago. I sat there on our living room floor, surrounded by leftover Chinese takeout, RSVP envelopes, and an unopened box labeled bridal shower decor, and realized I was planning a wedding that had already turned into a slow-motion funeral. What haunted me wasn't even what she said. It was how she said it. Calm, smug, with a voice that sounded more like someone gossiping about a coworker than the man she once promised to grow old with. Like I was just some emotionally needy pit stop before she found someone better. And maybe she already had. That's when my brain started spinning. I started thinking about the weird moment from that morning. The way she paused after brushing her teeth, staring at her phone like she was weighing something. She had smiled, barely, and mumbled something about finally sending that thing to Lana. At the time, I thought she meant the Airbnb code for the bachelorette trip. Now I realized she had probably just sent the execution order, and she hadn't noticed it went to me instead. I grabbed her phone from the charger again, hands trembling. She hadn't set up a password, a relic from the early days of trust and transparency, I guess. I opened the Messages app. There it was. Sent at 8:41 a.m. Audio memo, 037. Recipient, Clarence. Not Lana. Me. She hadn't checked her phone since. That's why everything still looked normal. That's why she kissed my cheek when she left for Pilates and told me to pick whichever cake you want. I trust your taste. My taste. The same taste she said made her want to laugh behind my back. I stood up slowly, walking toward the kitchen like I was drunk. I poured myself a glass of milk. Don't ask me why. Maybe because I used to do that as a kid when I had nightmares. This felt like one. A cruel, waking version with better lighting. I looked around our apartment. Every object now felt infected. The engagement ring box sitting under a dish towel on the counter. The fake Mr. and Mrs. sign she'd bought ironically but secretly loved. The mug she painted at one of those wine and ceramic nights with her friends that said Clarence is my human diary in wobbly pink letters. It all felt staged. Plastic. Like a set built around me while the cameras were secretly rolling. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront her? Act normal, and wait to see how deep this went? Maybe I was just a soft-launch fiancé, good enough to get likes on Instagram until she found her real match. Or maybe this whole engagement was some twisted form of charity work in her mind. A slow unraveling of my dignity disguised as love. I did the only thing my broken mind could think of in that moment. I forwarded the memo to my laptop, then emailed it to myself again, twice. Once under a decoy folder labeled Taxes 2022, just in case. Call it paranoia or self-preservation, I didn't care. I needed proof. For later. For sanity. For when she looked me in the eyes and denied everything, which I knew she would. Then I did something worse. Something weak. I walked into our bedroom, opened my drawer, and stared at the ring. I still wanted to give it to her. Can you believe that? Somewhere in the dark corners of my heart, a part of me still hoped it was a joke. A test. That she'd walk through the door laughing and say, You were never supposed to hear that. It was just sarcasm. You know how I am with Lana. I was that kind of pathetic. But I also knew something else was off. Because that wasn't the only voice memo in her history. And the next one I listened to, the one sent the night before, didn't just hurt. It broke me. And you're not going to believe what she said. I didn't even sit down. I just stood there in the middle of our bedroom, her phone still warm in my hand, the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me like time was mocking my confusion. My ears were ringing. That kind of high-pitched static you hear right before something collapses, whether it's a building or your entire sense of reality. I tapped into her audio message history. That wasn't the only one. There were others. Some were sent to her sister. Some to a contact named Melly Wineglass Kissmark, a name I'd never seen before. A few were deleted, but a few weren't. And I don't know why I did it. Maybe because I was already drowning and figured, what's a little deeper water? But I hit play on one of the older ones. Dated 2 nights ago, at 1:23 a.m. Her voice was lower, tired, but not slurred. She was calm, matter of fact. Okay, I swear to God, if I have to hear Clarence say one more time that he just wants us to be aligned spiritually before the big day, I'm gonna actually lose it. Like, what does that even mean? He read one book on meditation, and now he thinks he's the Dalai Lama with an anxiety disorder. The woman she sent it to, Melly, must have replied with a laughing reaction because Delaney's next message, just 10 seconds later, played automatically. No, but seriously, he thinks our biggest issue is that we haven't co-regulated enough emotionally. Girl, my biggest issue is that I have to fake moans just to get him to feel like a man. The sex is clinical, like he's trying to follow IKEA instructions, but something's missing. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, not even because of what she said, but because of how she said it. That same tone again. That effortless cruelty dressed up like humor. The worst things said in the lightest voice. Like she'd been storing this up, death by 1,000 giggles. And I remembered something. A moment from 2 weeks ago. We were in the middle of a Target run, looking at placemats, and she got a voice memo right there in the aisle. I'd asked what it was and she smiled, locked her phone, and said, "Oh, Melly being Melly. Total nonsense." Then she changed the subject to whether navy blue was too depressing for the dining room. Now I realized it probably wasn't nonsense at all. It was the two of them laughing at me. Like I was the joke that kept on giving. The walls of the apartment felt closer now. Like they were leaning in to listen. The silence was thick and weird, like a stranger had just walked into the room and hadn't said a word yet. I suddenly hated everything in that space. The bookshelf I built by hand. The framed photos of us at Crater Lake. The his and hers toothbrush holders she ordered from Etsy. They felt like props in a lie. I opened the bottom drawer of her nightstand. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe validation. Maybe a gun to shoot my ego with. What I found instead nearly made me drop the phone. A second phone. Old. No case. Cracked screen. Battery at 6%. Why would she have another phone? I stared at it like it might bite me. It had no password either. I opened her messages. There were only a few threads. One of them was with someone saved as just the letter T. No emojis. No last name. Just T. And the first message was from Delaney. Sent the same night as her first memo. He's proposing tomorrow. You were right. I needed to see this through. Don't say anything yet. One thing at a time. And T replied, "Take your time. He'll be fine. You know where I stand." The message had a photo attached. I tapped it. It was blurry, dark, taken from the back seat of a car. A hand, her hand, on someone's thigh. A man's. Definitely not mine. I couldn't breathe. She wasn't just mocking me behind my back. She wasn't just planning to break up later. She was in something else already, something with someone who knew. Someone she trusted enough to loop in, while still sharing a bed with me, still holding my hand in front of our families, still planning centerpieces and flower arrangements and color themes and honeymoon activities and sending fake little Pinterest links about dream cabins. I backed away from the drawer like it was radioactive. My pulse was pounding. My hands were sweating. I felt stupid, small, used. I'd spent years building a future with her. I gave up jobs to stay in her city. I lost friends who said she was too good to be true, and now I wondered if they had seen something I didn't. Something I refused to see. Still, I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom for a long time, just staring at the life I had built, piece by piece, lie by lie, and wondering how the hell I was going to erase myself from it without completely imploding. And then I did what I should have done earlier. I packed a bag, and that's when the front door opened. She was home. The sound of the front door unlocking was quiet. A soft click, a push, and then the usual squeak. That slight creak she always asked me to oil but secretly liked because it sounded like home. I froze in the bedroom doorway, her second phone still sitting in the drawer behind me like a loaded weapon I hadn't decided to fire yet. My own backpack was half zipped on the bed, the ring box still tucked inside the side pocket where I kept loose receipts and half-dead pens. Clark? Her voice drifted into the apartment like nothing had happened, like she hadn't buried me alive with a 37-second memo and an entire graveyard of secrets. I didn't answer right away. She was humming something, a stupid jingle from a protein bar ad she liked, and setting her keys in the bowl we kept near the door. I heard her toe off her sneakers, then the muffled sound of a grocery bag hitting the kitchen counter. Then silence. Clarence? I stepped out of the bedroom slowly, hands empty, expression blank. I had rehearsed 1,000 versions of this moment in my head. Shouting, crying, throwing things, demanding answers. But when I looked at her, really looked at her, all I could feel was detachment. Like I was staring at a stranger I used to recognize, now wearing her skin. She smiled at first. Brief, tight. Maybe reading my stillness as brooding, or maybe guilt for leaving earlier without a proper goodbye. Then her eyes narrowed, her smile faded, and I watched her tilt her head ever so slightly, scanning me like a technician diagnosing a system failure. What? She said. Not angry, just curious. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. What happened? And just like that, I realized something I hadn't until this very moment. She didn't know I'd heard the memo. She hadn't checked her messages. Not the audio. Not the second phone. She thought I was still the same man who woke up this morning and asked if she wanted oat milk or almond milk in her smoothie. She still believed I was clueless. Soft. Predictable. So I played along. I lied. I said, nothing. Just a bad headache. She blinked. Really? You look pale. I shrugged. Didn't sleep much. Didn't eat. Oh. She nodded, relaxed a little. I brought those hummus chips you like. And oat milk, in case we're low. The casualness of it made my stomach turn. This woman, who less than 48 hours ago called me a golden retriever with anxiety, was now offering hummus chips like they were some kind of love language. I watched her move across the room, open the fridge, and place the oat milk inside. Her ponytail swung with each step, neat and effortless. I knew that ponytail. I used to love it. Now it looked like the tail of a fox, clever, twitchy, hiding teeth. You want to help me go through the catering emails later? She asked, back still turned. Or should I just narrow it down to the two we liked? I didn't respond. She turned around slowly, holding a bottle of water now. Clark. I met her eyes and tried to remember when they stopped looking like home. I couldn't pinpoint it. Maybe they never did. I walked past her without saying a word and picked up the paper bag she'd dropped by the door. I dug through it slowly. Almond butter, kale, some kind of bougie trail mix. No chips. You didn't get the hummus chips, I said softly. She blinked. What? You said you bought them. They're not here. Oh. She glanced at the bag, then gave a quick shrug. I must have forgotten. What's the big deal? Just interesting, I said. Then I smiled. It wasn't a real smile. It was the smile of someone who knew the murder weapon was under the floorboards and was just waiting to see if you'd confess before the blood started seeping through. She looked at me like she was trying to refigure me out. That was new. She was used to reading me like a children's book. Now she was squinting. And that's when I knew I had leverage. I didn't have to explode. I didn't have to accuse her. Not yet. I could gather more. Watch her. Study the lies as they formed. Make her think I was still in the dark. Because the worst thing you can do to someone who thinks they've outsmarted you is let them believe it. For now, she walked past me toward the hallway, and I stood still, listening as her phone buzzed inside her bag. A second later, she paused. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe she sensed the shift. Or maybe she just forgot something. You sure you're okay? She asked again, turning halfway toward me. I smiled again. Yeah. She nodded slowly, then walked into the bedroom and closed the door. And I stood there, in the kitchen of a life that wasn't mine anymore, planning my exit. But not yet. Not until I found out who T really was. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt or grief. Those feelings had already been replaced with something colder. Calculated. I lay on the living room couch, motionless, staring at the dark ceiling as the fridge hummed and the streetlights threw slow-moving shadows through the blinds. I could hear Delaney in the bedroom, shifting occasionally, one foot poking out from under the blanket like she always did when she got hot. We used to joke about that. Now it just felt like a human twitch in a machine I was beginning to see the wires inside of. I didn't close my eyes. I couldn't. I was afraid of what I'd dream about. Maybe her face, maybe his. Or worse, the version of me that still wanted to believe none of it was real. The second phone was back in its drawer. Still charged, still unlocked, still waiting for me. I didn't want to push too hard, too fast. I needed to be methodical. The old Clarence would have broken down crying, shouting, asking why. The new Clarence, the one being forged in this quiet betrayal, was learning restraint. Patience. She thought she was playing chess. She had no idea I'd learned the rules overnight. The next morning, Delaney left early. She claimed she had a meeting with a new clinical trial director downtown. She wore her usual power coat. White, minimalist, belt cinched tight, like she was going to war in style. She kissed me on the forehead. I let her. I didn't flinch. When the door clicked shut, I waited. Listened. Then counted to 60. Twice. Once for her to get to the elevator. Once more in case she forgot something. Then I moved. Back to the drawer. Back to the second phone. There was a password on it now. She must have found it out of place. I cursed under my breath. My first mistake. She was already adjusting. Locking doors. Tightening the perimeter. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone like it might unlock itself out of guilt. I tried birthdays, anniversaries, her cat's name from childhood. Nothing. Then I remembered the voice memo. One thing at a time. That's what she said. And then, you were right. I needed to see this through. I typed in 0417, the day we met. Access denied. Then 0910, the day we got engaged. Nope. I leaned back, frustrated. Then it hit me. Something colder. Something obvious. Her father's death anniversary. She never talked about it. But I remembered. She had a small, quiet breakdown that week every year. March 8th. I typed 0308. The phone unlocked. I exhaled slowly, then immediately opened the messages. T. Had texted twice this morning already. T. Did you tell him yet? T. You're playing with fire, D. No response from her. I scrolled up. Way up. Their thread went back months. Conversations at odd hours. Codes. Photos. Even memes. The stupid kind. The kind couples send each other when they're deep in it and want to pretend they're more than sex and secrets. There were no names. No selfies. But there was tone. Familiarity. Affection disguised in sarcasm. The kind of writing Delaney only ever used with me in the first 6 months. The kind that disappeared once she got comfortable, once she didn't feel the need to impress anymore. I saved everything. Screenshotted. Backed up. Sent to my hidden drive, encrypted and archived. If she wanted to turn this into a war, I wanted the battlefield mined and mapped before she even laced her boots. Then, near the middle of the thread, one message stopped me cold. T. You'd better be careful. If he finds out what we did last November. That was it. No follow-up. No reply. Just that. November? What happened in November? I thought back. She said she was at a conference in San Diego. I had a fever. Spent 3 days alone on the couch eating soup from a mug and binging old mystery thrillers. I'd FaceTimed her once. She was in a hotel lobby. Or so she said. I went to my laptop and pulled up our shared photo archive. There were no uploads for that weekend. Nothing. She posted to Instagram. A blurry latte and a book on a marble table. But the photo had no geotag. And now that I was looking closer, there was no reflection in the spoon. Her usual details were missing. Had she ever even gone? Or had she been with him? With T? I scrolled down further. Found a contact backup. T was listed with only a burner Gmail address. No number. No social handles. But the photo? I hadn't looked yet. I tapped it open. It was a black square. But when I boosted the brightness, I noticed something faint, almost invisible, in the background. A window. A skyline. I knew that skyline. It wasn't San Diego. It was Chicago. My stomach flipped. That's where my ex lived. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. But she'd always hated Delaney. Said she had actress energy. Fake tears. Big eyes. And something else I'd written off at the time. She watches you like she's collecting data, like she's trying to become the version of herself she thinks you'll never leave. Back then I thought it was jealousy. Now I wasn't so sure. I stared at that faint window reflection until my eyes burned. Until I realized the figure in the reflection? It wasn't Delaney. It was a man, bearded, tall, standing just behind the phone, smiling. He was taking the photo, and Delaney had used his phone to send it to herself. That's who T was. He wasn't just some fling. He wasn't just someone from work. He was something else entirely. And I had a sick, sinking feeling that he was a name I knew. One that had once belonged to someone Delaney swore she'd blocked forever. I stared at the reflection in the photo like it might blink. Like maybe the ghost of my dignity could still tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, stop. Look away. You don't need to see this." But it was already too late. I knew that smile. Knew it like I knew my own. Because I had once trusted that smile. His name was Travis Landon. And once upon a time, he was my best friend. We'd grown up 2 blocks apart. Same summer jobs. Same college. Same tattoos on opposite arms, ironic and matching. We even had a falling out playlist on Spotify. That's how deep we were. He was the kind of friend who knew what time I lost my virginity and what song was playing when my dad crashed our family truck. That kind of history doesn't just dissolve. It implodes. It ended 2 years ago, just after Delaney and I moved in together. And now it all made sense. All those weird little fights. The way she always asked me why I didn't patch things up with Trav. The way she lit up when his name came up on old Facebook memories. And especially that one night she got a little too drunk and blurted out, "If you just talked to him again, maybe you'd finally stop walking around like someone stole your dog." I remember snapping at her. I said, "Don't bring him up again. You don't know what happened." But she did, didn't she? Because she was there. Not physically, but emotionally. Behind the scenes. Stitching together the threads of betrayal while I was still figuring out how to install curtain rods in our new apartment. I sat back in my chair and laughed. Not a good laugh. Not even a bitter one. It was that hollow, dry kind of laugh you give when you've been so thoroughly humiliated that your brain just quits. Like it needs to reboot. Delaney wasn't cheating on me with a stranger. She was cheating on me with the one person who already knew how to break me. I clicked through more messages. Each one felt like stepping barefoot across broken glass. There were hotel confirmations, digital boarding passes, even Uber receipts. She'd built a second life with him, one airport terminal at a time. I found a message where he said, "You looked nervous when you left. Does he suspect anything?" And she replied with, "Not unless he's psychic. He's still making Pinterest boards for our wedding. Bless his heart." Bless his heart. Like I was some pitiful side character in my own story. The comic relief. The tragic joke with no punchline. I closed the messages. My hand was trembling now. I hadn't even noticed. The screen blurred as my breath caught in my throat, finally cracking something open that I'd been holding back for days. I cried, but not the way you think. There wasn't sobbing. No gasping. Just one slow, wet collapse. I sat there in that silent apartment, the morning light crawling over the hardwood floor like it was ashamed to be seen, and I quietly, pathetically fell apart. That's when I heard the key in the lock. Not the front door, the apartment lobby downstairs. Our building was old, and the buzzers never worked, so we gave keys to people we trusted. Except I hadn't given anyone a key in 2 years. I wiped my face and stood slowly. A minute later, I heard footsteps. Then the sound of the front door knob turning. I slipped the burner phone into my hoodie pocket and opened the fridge. Grabbed a bottle of water. Tried to look normal. Boring. Predictable. When the door opened, Delaney walked in carrying a folded brown bag and a fake smile. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, walking in like he owned the oxygen in the room, was Travis. The moment our eyes met, I felt something ancient and violent stir inside me. He hesitated. Just slightly. Just enough for me to see that he didn't expect to find me home. Delaney covered the silence like she was painting over rot. "Look who I ran into outside." Small world, right? She said too fast. Too loud. I didn't speak. Travis cleared his throat. "Hey man, been a while." His voice was lower than I remembered. More confident. He was wearing a navy shirt, sleeves rolled up, revealing that same dumb snake tattoo we both got the night we turned 20. I used to think it meant loyalty. Now it just looked like a brand for cowards. Delaney stepped between us. "I figured, maybe it's time you guys talked," she said, setting the bag down. "I've been saying that for a while now, right?" I smiled. Not because it was funny, But because she still thought she was in control, she still thought I hadn't found the phone, that I hadn't read the messages, that I hadn't seen the photo. They were both standing in my home, in the house I paid for, the life I built, trying to sell me some fairy tale about running into each other. I wanted to scream, but instead, I leaned against the counter, took a sip of water, and looked Travis dead in the eye. "You want coffee?" I asked. He blinked. Sure." Delaney stepped back, clearly relieved. She thought I was accepting it, that I was still soft. But I had a new plan now. I wasn't going to react. I was going to watch them burn. I stood at the counter and watched the two of them try to act like human beings. You could practically hear the gears grinding in their heads as they scrambled to normalize the situation. Travis scratched the back of his neck like he always used to do when he got nervous, and Delaney did this thing where she fiddled with her ring. Not the ring, of course, but the little gold one she wore on her thumb. She always played with it when she was lying. "I'll take mine black," Travis said, his voice just slightly strained. I nodded and turned toward the coffee maker. I moved slow on purpose. Bought time. Watched them through the reflection in the microwave door like a two-way mirror. They weren't touching, but the distance between them wasn't natural either. Too much space. Too much tension. Like they didn't know if they should pretend to be strangers or allies. When the coffee started brewing, I leaned on the counter, arms crossed, pretending to be tired. I gave them the look of a man who'd been through hell, just not the kind they thought. Delaney broke first. "So, Trav was just walking by the building and I, thought it would be nice for you two to maybe catch up a little." She smiled like she was pitching a charity commercial. Travis nodded, a half-second behind. "Yeah, man. Been thinking about you lately. Missed this. Missed this." The audacity made me want to laugh. But I didn't. I just looked at him and said, "Yeah, missed you too, bud." Delaney visibly relaxed. She thought she'd pulled it off, that she'd somehow spun this into a reconciliation moment, and not what it really was, the prelude to an ambush. "So," I said slowly, "how long are you in town, Trav?" He looked surprised. "Oh, just a few days. Some stuff for work." "Right?" I said, nodding. "Work. Still doing back-end infrastructure, whatever it was." He blinked. Yeah, mostly logistics now." Delaney looked at him quickly, too quickly. That's when I knew for sure. She had no idea what he actually did. She probably never asked. She was too busy projecting onto him, filling in his blanks with fantasies she didn't think I was man enough to fulfill. The coffee finished brewing. I poured him a cup, handed it over without ceremony, and turned to Delaney. "You want anything?" She shook her head too fast. "I'm good." She didn't want to sit. She didn't want to be here. But I did. I needed her here. "Cool," I said, sipping my cup. "So tell me something. Trav, you still with Claire?" His jaw twitched. Just slightly. A flicker of panic. Claire had been his long-distance girlfriend before everything went to hell. She was sweet, quiet, worked with autistic children. She'd been the only reason I hadn't burned the bridge with him entirely. Nah," he said. "Didn't work out." I nodded. Right. That's too bad. She was solid." Delaney cut in. "Babe." But I held up a hand. "Let me just say something real quick." She shut her mouth. Travis looked down into his mug. "I've been thinking a lot lately." I began, calm, slow, every syllable intentional, about what it means to really know someone. You spend years believing you've got them figured out. You learn their rhythms, their tells, their flaws, their fears. You build your life around who you think they are. Delaney shifted in her seat. "And then one day," I continued, "you find out that person's been running their own little side project. One you never signed off on. One that, if you're lucky, you discover before you sign your name to a lifelong contract." I looked directly at her. Her face was still, but her eyes were sprinting. "You find a burner phone," I added softly, "and everything starts to make sense." Travis went rigid. Delaney's face turned the color of old milk. The room went dead silent. "I know," I said. It was the softest thing I'd said all morning, but it hit like a bomb. Delaney opened her mouth, then closed it. Travis stood up, his chair screeching across the floor. "Look." "No," I cut him off. "You sit." He did, without argument, like an obedient child. "I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to break anything," I said, "because that's not who I am anymore." I turned to Delaney. "You told him I'd break down, didn't you? That I'd cry and beg and fall apart." She stared at the table. "But I didn't," I said. Because I've been spending the last 48 hours cleaning up the emotional wreckage of your war. I found the hotel receipts, the boarding passes. I read the messages. All of them. Still, no sound from her. Travis looked like he wanted to vanish. So here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. You're both going to walk out that door. You're going to leave your keys on the table. And you're not going to contact me again. Not directly. Not indirectly. Not through fake emails or mutual friends or late-night apologies after 3 glasses of wine. Delaney finally looked at me. Clarence, please. Don't, I said. Please don't insult me with that voice. You used it when you asked me to write your maid of honor's speech. You don't get to use it now. Her lip trembled. Travis stood again. Slower this time. I never meant for this to happen, he said. Of course you did, I replied. You just didn't expect to get caught. They both stood there for a long moment, frozen. Then she reached into her bag, pulled out her keys, and set them gently on the counter. Travis did the same. No words. No last-minute confessions. No messy goodbyes. They just left. And when the door closed behind them, I finally exhaled. But I didn't feel relief. Not even close. Because I had one last card to play. And they had no idea what was coming next. They were gone. The apartment was silent, still, and finally mine again, though it didn't feel like home anymore. Not yet. Their scent still clung to the air like bad perfume. Betrayal mixed with denial and overconfidence. But they'd left their keys behind. That part was real. That was something. I walked to the window and looked out. I caught a glimpse of Delaney walking fast down the sidewalk, not looking back. Travis followed behind her like a kicked dog. Fitting. He'd always liked to follow, even when he thought he was leading. I could have ended the story there. I really could have. But I didn't. I opened my laptop. The folder with all the screenshots, photos, messages, everything, was already organized, time-stamped, and zipped. I hovered over the send button, my cursor resting on an email draft addressed to Travis's employer, Delaney's boss, and, in blind carbon copy, Claire. Yes, that Claire. His ex. The sweet one. The only person he never deserved. But I didn't click send. Not because they didn't deserve it. They did. Every ounce of it. But I realized something in that moment. Something I never expected. I didn't care anymore. Not really. Not enough to drag myself through their fire one more time. I closed the laptop. Because what Delaney and Travis had taken from me wasn't my pride. They never actually had that. What they'd taken was time. Energy. The version of myself I shrunk down into just to keep them comfortable. But the moment they walked out that door, I took it all back. I cleaned the apartment slowly that afternoon. I stripped the bed, opened the windows, donated the framed photos to the garbage chute. I boxed her things with soft hands, like they were breakable, not because I cared, but because I did. Because I am still someone who treats even traitors with grace. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister. We'd grown distant. Delaney said she was too nosy, that her energy was bad for our relationship. I believed her. God, I was so willing to believe her. But when my sister picked up the phone and heard my voice, she didn't hesitate. She didn't say, I told you so. She just said, where are you? I'm coming to get you. The next morning, I was on a train heading out of the city, watching it all get smaller in the window. The apartment. The betrayal. The version of me who begged for someone to just choose him and mean it. Gone. I spent a few weeks with my sister. I cooked. I sat on the porch with her and her 2 cats. I read books that weren't about emotional growth or communication strategies. I slept. Really slept. For the first time in months. And one night, about a month later, I got an email. No subject line. No body. Just a single attachment. A picture of the ring I never gave Delaney. It had been pawned. Sold for 1/4 of what I paid for it. I laughed so hard I scared the cats. I didn't reply, because she still thought I wanted closure. But I didn't. I had peace now. And you know what the crazy part is? A few weeks after that, I met someone. Not through a dating app. Not in some dramatic twist. Just at a bookstore. I was sitting there, reading a paperback on architectural ruins, and she asked if the seat next to me was taken. Her name's Iris. She's smart. Quiet. Doesn't perform affection like a show. She listens. We're taking it slow. And every time she looks at me, I don't feel like a golden retriever with anxiety anymore. I feel like a man. Not because she made me one, but because I finally remembered who I was before I started apologizing for it. This is the end of my story. No revenge. No big fireball. Just the sound of me walking away and never looking back. And honestly, that was louder than any explosion.